All right, welcome back everyone to the Enterprise Monkey Show with your host Brandon Burns and Aamir Katab. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you very much. It's good to have you all back for another week, another episode. For those of you on YouTube, hello, good to see you all. And those of you listening on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn and Spreaker, SoundCloud also, great to have you back. All right, we're going to dive straight into today's episode, Aamir. I'm excited for this one because this is the number one question we get asked every single day. So I'm going to pass over to you and you can announce to the audience what the topic is.
Okay. So the topic is, how much does it cost to build an app?
Great question. Hear it all the time.
How much does it cost to build an app?
I'm not quite sure. Let me get back to you. No, this is a question we get a lot. And one of the biggest things we need to emphasize when someone comes through to us and asks is, well, before you ask how much is it to build an app, first we need to ask, what is it you're trying to achieve? Now that sounds like just as broad a question as the first. However, if you can understand what you're trying to achieve, the problem you're trying to solve, and the technology that's required, then you can start to unpack how much it's going to cost you to execute, build, and release that type of application.
Absolutely. And the discussion that we were having with Ian from Cadacious in the morning, and we were talking about the issues that we face when people are asking about what's the cost. And the general perception with the cost of an app is that the cost of an app would be as simple as telling the cost of a website. You can generally tell the cost of the website, but an app is actually building like a car or building a home, but sort of more complicated than that, because everyone knows what goes into building a home. They knows that there's going to be a flooring, there's going to be furniture and things like that. But
Totally.
with the application, people don't understand the process of developing an application.
Mm-hmm.
And the process is so complicated, and every step contributes to the cost of the development.
Yes.
So it's not easy to quickly tell what's the cost of an application unless we know what's going to be in there, and then we decide on the technology, because the cost of an app is directly related to the amount of hours that's going to be consumed in the development of that particular application.
Okay, so just stop you there. So it's not that we're avoiding answering this question, because I totally understand how people want to know a price so that they can understand if this project fits within their budget. So we want to get to that endpoint with the client or the customer as quickly as you, the client, does. So we want to answer that question for you. We want you to understand how much it's going to execute your app. So maybe what we can do here is focus on some of the key features or requirements of particular apps that contribute to a cost maybe being raised significantly. For example, could you give me, Aamir, an example of a feature that requires a lot of development hours to build and execute?
Right. So even before the features, if we talk about the technology that goes into development of the application, so we have got a web application technology, and as we discussed in our last one of our previous podcasts, that web application development is actually cheaper than a mobile application development. But even when we go into mobile application, the hybrid application development is cheaper than the native application development.
Okay.
So there are according to different platforms, the cost is different. But even when it comes to development of mobile applications or web application, the cost can vary a lot depending upon which technology platform are we choosing, because some technology platforms are difficult to build on, requires more time. Some technology platforms are easier and simpler. So it also comes down to what level of scale do we want in an application. If we are developing a minimum viable product that we know that we are going to devise after 2 years, we might not want to build the most scalable platform and spend like millions of dollars spending it. It's also a conversation of what are we actually trying to build, what are we trying to achieve through the application, and then understanding what's going to be involved in development of that.
Okay, so something really important to take from that is, ordinarily, the most expensive option is to build a mobile app in a native environment.
Absolutely.
The second most expensive, usually, is to build a mobile app on a hybrid platform.
That's right.
And most often, the most budget efficient and cost effective means for building an app is to build a website application.
Absolutely.
And for those of you listening who haven't heard our last podcast, really quickly, a website application, Aamir, is
A website application is basically is similar to a website which is developed on web technologies.
Correct.
But they are actually they can be used from a browser. So they can be used from a desktop browser or an iPad browser or an iPhone browser or like any
Correct.
mobile browser.
So if you were to view a website application on your browser, on your smartphone, it will look and feel and operate like a mobile app, but it's dependent upon your website connection, your internet connection, and by the browser.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So for those of you listening, that's a really good way to answer quickly if you know you're going to have a big budget, a medium budget, or a small budget.
That's right.
So depending on the features, unless it's something incredibly technical and outlandish, a website application most likely will be the suitable option for you. Now, to give people an idea, Aamir, about what it costs to execute a website application, let's talk about a range. So usually, where would a website application price point begin?
Right. So a website application price point in Australia would probably begin at somewhere around $10,000.
Okay.
You can actually start from a bit lower as well, depending upon whether there are lots of plugins or existing libraries that exist that you can just use and plug into your system.
Gotcha.
But if not, and if you're doing even the basic development of a very basic web application, so just to give an overview of what is actually involved in the cost. So there is a project management cost that's always involved in the development of an application, and that's generally 20% of the total cost.
Okay.
Then we have got a cost of developing the design or the UI of the application, and that's again generally 15 to 20% of the cost. And then there's the cost that's involved in the actual development, and that also and that actual development includes the coding of the application, setting up the database of the application, and all of these different components.
Testing.
Absolutely. Testing is again 10 to 15% of the cost.
So the remaining 60% is covered through the development and the build of the application.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got project management accounts for 20%.
Yeah.
So the time involved for managing the project end to end, making sure it stays within scope and it's delivered in a timely manner.
Absolutely.
The design, so the look and feel and the experience of which the person using your app is going to go through.
That's right.
That accounts for 20%. And then 60% is accounted for by the development team. So the people that actually build code and execute this so that it works and it functions.
That's right.
Okay, cool. So to give people an idea, roughly with a website application, talk to me about the number of hours that you could expect to spend on the project management of a project.
So, well, it varies a lot. So generally with a web application, even with a smaller web application, you are looking at a 2 to 3 months development cycle. So with a 2 to 3 months development cycle, you are looking at a project manager who is engaged around 2 days a week, which means around 8 days a month. And sort of say if it's a 3 month project, a person is going to engage for 24 days.
Okay, so 64 hours a month?
24 hours a month for project manager.
Yep. So times 3, that takes it to around 72.
Yep.
Okay. So and a rough cost for an agency or app development company per hour is?
So for project manager, generally the cost is around 120.
Okay.
And then development cost can be a bit less or a bit more depending upon whether your resources are onshore or offshore.
Okay, so just calculating now, to have that app built in Australia from the project management element, which is 20% of your project, 72 hours a month times 120.
Which is around $8,400.
Okay, so that's around about $8,600?
Yep.
Okay, so that accounts for your project manager. Now, that's if you're getting the project built, project managed in Australia, correct?
That's right. And that's for the application that is going to be developed full-time for 3 months.
Okay.
So and these are the applications that would in total generally cost between $30,000 to $50,000.
Okay, excellent. So I understand now why that's about 20%.
Right.
So in a web application, are we talking similar amount of hours of project management or potentially significantly less?
Well, the project management hours are actually similar. The actually difference between the web application and the mobile application is, with mobile application, you have to develop web services first, which is similar to developing a web application, like not full web application, but the backend of a web application.
Yes.
And then you have to develop an app on iOS platform and an app on Android platform. So those two apps are being developed parallelly or one after another. So there's like the efforts are 3 times of the web application.
Okay.
Yep.
Right, understand. All right, so are we getting a little bit closer to answering people's question, maybe not around how much does it cost to build an app, but what's involved to give you an indicative price?
Absolutely.
So we would actually say to our clients and people listening who are considering building an app with a company that if you speak with that company and they mention that to build the app, it's going to sit within a range, that's probably not a bad piece of advice to receive, because that's an app development company acknowledging that this project will evolve. We'll try to stay within scope, but we're acknowledging and putting our hand up at the beginning and saying there may be additional work involved.
Absolutely.
And that is something that we'll keep a close eye on, but we're flagging with you from the beginning to be honest and transparent.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So project management's covered. So we understand that, it's a 2 to 3 month process to build an app.
Yeah.
And the project management team will spend roughly 2 days a month working on your project.
2 days a week.
2 days a week, sorry. So, thank you, Aamir. 2 days a week, so 24 hours a month. So 72 in total project management. So let's move forward next to the process of design, UI, UX.
Yeah. So with design and the UI and the UX, like if you are developing any application, you need to think about the actual front end or the UI of the application, how it's going to look and work like. And there are processes that are involved in doing that. So first you go through a wireframing process where you actually develop the layout of your application.
Yes.
Then we develop the mockups or the actual design of how the application is going to look and feel like. And then you have to convert that design into the actual front end of the application. So there's a person who's involved in the initial workshop who do the mock-ups with you. Then there's a designer who's involved in the designing of the front end or making the prototypes. And then there is a UI developer that's involved in actually converting those designs to the actual application.
Right. Okay. So that's 20% of the build.
Yeah.
That process, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, occurs at the front end of the 3 month period, because it's a precursor to the development. Is that right?
Yep. So mostly it occurs half of it occurs at the front end, especially the design part of it.
Yes.
And then the implementation of design can happen as the application starts being developed.
Okay. So roughly how many hours a week in the first month would be spent designing?
Well, it's sort of initially in the first couple of weeks, there is a lot of time that's actually spent designing. It's sort of generally a designer working full time on design.
Okay.
Developing the
So how
design.
many hours across the 3 months do you think?
Well, it depends. So if the application is
Roughly 72?
It's roughly 72 hours. Yep.
Yep, beautiful. That's to be safe. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's covered mainly in the beginning of the project.
That's right.
As opposed to the end. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
40% of the project
Yeah.
outlined, taken care of, given a rough indication of hours.
Right.
Let's talk about the development arm, which takes up more than 50%. It takes up 60% of the build.
Absolutely, yeah. So with development, so there are different people again involved in the development of the application.
Yes.
So if you are looking at a web application, you would have if it's being developed on PHP, which is the development language, you will have a PHP MySQL developer, maybe 1 or 2 people that are involved in the development. And then you will have a database person who will be involved on a more of a part-time basis, but to help set up the database, help set up the enterprise architecture. And then you will have a server person involved who will be involved in the deployment of the application at the end of the development as well. And then you have got testers that are involved throughout the development process. So generally with the waterfall project management, the way it used to happen was that you had whole development in the beginning and then the whole testing at the end.
Yes.
But with the agile methodology that a lot of organizations use and that we use at Enterprise Monkey, the testing happens as the development happens and there. So testing is also a sort of a concurrent process with the development.
Okay, beautiful. All right, so that accounts for the 3 sections of building an app.
Yep.
Gives people an idea of the cost.
That's right.
So just answer for me, but quickly, what's a feature that you've experienced in the past that has been quite an easy feature to build and execute? And what's a feature or function that's been really expensive and time consuming to build?
Absolutely. So any app that is only dealing with the content and which is probably a news application or an application where you're just sending people information, that's a pretty easy and straightforward to build because they are like more of a one-way interaction where people are just opening the application and just viewing things.
Yes.
The cost is actually added when you want a login and registration into the application. So that's one cost. If there's an application that doesn't require user registration, authentication, and login, you don't need that.
Yep.
Then the cost is, as I said, it's added when you need user registration and login, but you need further user involvement as well. Okay. And the costs then increase when you are developing a platform type of application. So a platform can be a marketplace, or can be a place where 2 or more people are actually interacting with each other. So that increases the cost of the application further as well. Now, but generally the applications that we build for startups would have a login and registration, would have a marketplace or a platform, and that all is fine and achievable at a cost under $50,000. But then the cost of development significantly increase if we use any sensors of the mobile phones, especially in the case of mobile applications, if you want to use gyroscope or accelerometer or things like that.
Okay, just quickly for those listening, gyroscope, what is that?
So gyroscope and accelerometer are the sensors on the mobile phone. When you are using your mobile phone and you're holding it in one way or another, the gyroscope and accelerometer actually helps your phone understand how is it being held, and then allows you to control games or things according to your mobile phone.
So that's a feature that would have been used in Pokemon Go.
Absolutely. And then even with that Hungry Jack app.
Okay. Is it expensive to have an app that requires not only the ability to take a photo, but the ability to edit, refine, and change the appearance and look and feel of that photo?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Snapchat, for example.
Yeah. So if you're looking at a Snapchat-like application, you are thinking beyond $100,000.
Yes.
As soon as you're thinking about adding filters and using sensors. And not only that, Snapchat is actually moved into more of augmented reality space. So you can like have your camera on your face, and you can sort of make different caricatures and things like that. So that's where you are looking beyond $100,000 for sure.
Okay.
As I said, marketplaces and can be below $100,000 and can be even below $50,000.
Yep.
And then once you are moving into the gaming space where you need a lot of animations and augmented reality and virtual reality, you are actually looking at beyond $200,000. Can go up to $300,000 as well.
All right. So from the top, we talked about how much does it cost to build an app. Now, we've answered the question to a degree, but I think one of the key takeouts for people listening is you can execute a website application for as little as $10,000 and above.
Absolutely. And then...
but some apps can cost significantly more. However, the best thing you can do is speak with someone like us about what's involved, what you're going to need and what you're not going to need, even though you might think you need a particular feature or function.
That's right.
And if you can find the time, do a workshop with us, or with someone, and spend the time, 2 hours probably, with us, scope out exactly what your idea and app's going to be and look like.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can give someone like us the correct information to be able to quote you accurately so that you know exactly what it's going to take.
Absolutely. Because if you are just seeking for a quote on even with a fixed functionality, you might think that you need it. And if we quote on that functionality, and it has happened to us in our previous experience when people were looking for something that was costing around $500,000, and when I sat with them, I tried to understand what they are trying to achieve, what problem they are trying to solve, and how we can actually still solve that problem by not developing all those fancy things. And we were able to develop a simple web application in $20,000. So you're looking at an app cost of $500,000, and then you're sort of developing something in $20,000. It's a huge difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge barrier to entry.
Yeah.
You can execute a app for a budget amount, I guess, or an efficient amount.
Absolutely.
And the best thing to do is take the time to talk to someone like us about it.
Yeah.
And we'll help you navigate exactly where you're going to spend your money best.
That's right.
And where you're going to be able to save it to put towards something else. So Aamir Khattab, CEO of Enterprise Monkey, and my wonderful business partner, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing with our audience what it actually costs and is involved in building an app. And anything else to add?
No, thanks. I think it's great to be with you on the podcast, and I'm enjoying this journey with you.
Excellent. All right. For those of you listening and watching, see you all next week. And thank you so much for your time. Enjoy.